therefore tears them down relentlessly and raises up their opposite. Now, about your discussion, your use of the term castration, I realize that you're not using it in a reductive sense, and I take that for granted. But you also
some of those tight pants.
You also talked about dependency, and as you probably know, today psychoanalysis focuses not on the period of castration anxiety, but on the pre-Oedipal period. In other words, for Kohut, for example, castration anxiety is a disintegration product of a failure, an already existing failure of self-development. And what that means is that the pain and suffering that these people experience was the result of what was inflicted on them, not only throughout their lives, because I would never be dismissive of that, ever, not for a minute, but particularly in early childhood, where the intolerance of the dependency of the child evokes incredible animus on the part of parents, because inwardly they feel utterly and totally bereft and dependent. And that is then reproduced in the child by the total abusive intolerance of the child's dependency. So one of the reasons I raise this is because the domain of early childhood is generally considered to be women's domain. Right? What's important about that? They're just babies, you know, blah-de-blah-de-blah. That's, women take care of that. But in my view, until people come to understand that parenting is the most significant dimension in which we need a revolution to occur, and if there's going to be a socialist humanist revolution, either it brings about a revolution in our relationship to our children, or it won't be worth a damn.
You know, Marilyn said, not for me to give an entire other paper. For those who don't know me, Marilyn does know me. I trained at the Chicago Institute, and so the Kohutian framework was what? Let me just try to let me answer it, but just comment, because given what you were saying, you shouldn't be sitting here with me for much of it. It's not very psychoanalytic, but it's very readable and very understandable. My students can understand it if they want to pass my class. But the work of George Lakoff, even though it's very cognitive and he focuses primarily on cognitive narratives, but how they connect with, the limbic system and the notions of pleasure, hate, and disgust. But he does talk about the strict father versus the nurture and parent. He doesn't say mother, he says parent approach. And part and parcel of that, as you just beautifully explained, is the strict father believes the world is a dangerous place. And either you learn how to kick ass or you're going to get your ass kicked. And you're going to have to fight and take care of yourself. And there is, as you point out, no toleration for dependency. Kids are encouraged to be on their own and to be tough, and and that leaves that enduring separation anxiety, which can be useful. It can motivate all kinds of things, but it can also lead to the kind of inner emptiness that will lead those kinds of people that have had these kinds of childhood to both reproduce that in their own kids and to be susceptible to the kinds of ideologies that I was talking about. So, I mean, I have no quarrel whatsoever. It's just that how much can I cover without completely boring everyone?
Well, you made a very good case about the...
You can stop there, Peter.
Thank you very much. Well, a good case about the roots of this new populism, what is happening now in the old right-wing populism. But there seems to me there's one aspect that may be somewhat different, or at least novel, and that is, it seems like a lot of this right-wing populism is very carefully studied tactics that the left used to use, and is employing them, frankly, rather effectively. at the very moment when the left seems not to be employing those very traditional tactics itself, like direct confrontation, forcing the media to cover you by having certain confrontations and sit-ins and confronting politicians. During the healthcare debate, for instance, why was it that the right was so mobilized and the liberals and left are sitting their asses waiting to see what Obama was going to do or not do? But we all knew it was a shitty bill. Whatever was going to come out was going to be a shitty bill. But the passivity and the lack of activity on the left is the scariest thing of all to me, more than what the right is doing. But I think they've studied the former ways that the left has learned how used to mobilize, and they've incorporated that. And that's scary to me because, remember that phrase that Hitler used? Hitler once said he learned a great deal from Marxism, not from the ideology, but from the methods. Now maybe something here too, it's not only the tactics of mobilization, direct action, yeah, they're doing direct action, and forcing the media to pay attention to them with provocative acts, etc., etc. But one thing that's a problem that the left has had, and continues to have, especially in light of this global economic crisis, is targeting the personifications of capital. That is, doing not something all that much different than what these guys are doing, what much of the left does. Instead of producing a critique of the systemic contradictions that leads to this crisis, well, you end up with a situation like the protest at the G8 summit in London last year. What was the main slogan? Hang the bankers. From the left. I mean, and if we're in the left, if our great star that we can advertise is Noam Chomsky, left-wing conspiracy theory, as against right-wing conspiracy theory, I mean, I'm sorry, I have a lot of respect for work he's done in the past, but doesn't go further than that in his critiques today.
Were you there someday when he talked about that?
No, I had to leave early. So I had to teach a class Monday morning. Yeah, I figured so. But the point is here I'm getting at is what to do. I mean, maybe we have to rethink very seriously how this may be being mimicked by the right wing in a certain sense. The attack of the personalities, down with the bankers, the speculators, etc. That has generally been the tenor of most left response to the financial and economic crisis. And if so, if we talk that way, the louder we shout, the more we feed ammunition to them.
You know, I'm not sure if I would, find, any disagreement with you. And in fact, part of this actually goes back to 1964 when Goldwater had his ass wiped. And the Republicans tried to understand, well, what are they going to do? And a number of them read Gramsci. They began to understand the importance of a war of position, of not winning the next election, but mobilizing the people. And this is something that the left has failed at for a number of reasons, not the least of which, and this is hinted in my analysis, but I'll just comment on it now, not the least of which is this dumb-ass belief of some stupid version of the Enlightenment that if people only knew what the incremental tax rate was for the rich between 1990 and 2008, they would mobilize because the rich are now paying 16.5% on their capital gains. And it's this dumbass understanding, which the right has very well understood, and more recently, I think as you point out, they've been reading Saul Alinsky, our own boy. And you are absolutely right. That wasn't something, I mean, I say that this is part and parcel of American history. But that said, it's going to take a particular form in every historical epoch, because the one thing we know about the Know Nothing Party is they didn't stage rallies for television cameras. They didn't have much control of the press, etc., etc. And so these things do change. And I think that one of the things that in addition to all of the ill treatment that the left does get in the media, but the left has always had this problem.
May we have your attention, please? The time is 4:15. The library will close in 45 minutes. Library card registration and internet service will end at 4:30. Thank you.
Okay, anyhow, part and parcel of the problem here, and this goes back to my, mentioning of de Tocqueville, part and parcel of American individualism that destroyed any sense of solidarity of immigrants coming over, especially in the latter 1800s, when people came over that were strongly, coming from Germany, where you had strong labor unions and things like that, that spirit of individualism has so warped America that it's very difficult for even the left in America to act in concert and work together as groups and join a number of groups such as, young African Americans would never be in a group of, geezers for democracy like us.